House, the collection, available from Arrow Video. I have here in front of me the collection, all 4 House movies. House 2, the second story. The very strange House 3, the horror show. And of course, the terrible House 4, the repossession. Terrible. House 3, what's interesting about that movie is that it wasn't released as House 3. It was released as The Horror Show, a movie which stars Lance Hendrickson and Brian James. However, it's technically a House movie. So what they did, for sake of argument, is call it House 3, The Horror Show, instead of The Horror Show. Which, strangely enough, The Horror Show is available through Scream Factory. I think the features on there are a little different than the ones we have on this set. But let's dive into this set right here. House. You know, House 1 is a really great little... Well, I got this light in here. It's terrible. Oh, come on, man. There we go. House. It's really just a really good little movie. It's a horror comedy. Came out in 1985. Just an all-about good year for horror. I'm a big Fright Night fan, so that one, of course, comes to mind. Return of the Living Dead's another great one. And the very underrated Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Speaking of Friday the 13th, House is produced by Sean S. Cunningham of Friday the 13th fame. He produced this movie. There's a lot of recurring players from the Friday the 13th movies. Sean S. Cunningham produced House. House was directed by the man, Steve Miner. If you look up on my TV over here, you'll see, I don't know if the camera can really pick it up here, but that looks really pale and white. But anyway, that's Steve Miner. It's a new special feature, making of House. Strangely enough, Mr. Miner is interviewed for House. However, for the really impressive Crystal Lake Memories Blu-ray big documentary, as a Blu-ray and DVD set, he's nowhere to be found for his contributions for Friday the 13th 1, Part 2, and Part 3 in 3D. It's really a shame. I feel like he was really important in those first 3 movies, and he just couldn't be bothered. But for House, he'll be bothered. So, let's get back to House. I do like this movie. It's a very fun little movie. And honestly, I love William Katt. I think he's great, and Greatest American Hero was a good little show from the early 80s. And, of course, these people might remember him from Carrie. Also, just a side note, he was very, very close to being Luke Skywalker. I mean, it was really, I think it came down between him and Mark Hamill. And they went with Mark Hamill. So Mr. Katt could have easily been Luke Skywalker, and of course his career would have been way better had he gotten that part, I think, especially later on. However, he wouldn't have had Greatest American Hero with him, but man, it would have been awesome. Oh, so here we go. Let's dive into this here. Got House 1. You know, this is new artwork that they commissioned for the House movies here. Of course, if you open it up, it does have the original poster art right there. It's reversible. Interesting note, too, is that when you open this set up, there's a nice little write-up there about the restorations. So these movies are fully restored, look awesome. Let's dive into a little more here. We have House 2, which, you know, it's okay. It lives up to its little slogan up there. It's getting weirder. Still a little fun movie. House 3, however, totally different monster. This movie here is pretty wild, and I definitely recommend checking this out. You know, I'm a big Lance Hendrickson fan. I loved him on Millennium. Of course, he was in The Terminator. He was in Aliens. I mean, he's just all around awesome in anything he touches. So, House 3, The Horror Show, definitely worth checking out. But, oh man, the turkey in this set here, House 4. Don't be fooled by William Katt's picture on here, guys. He's in the movie for like 10 minutes. It's weird. It's not that great, but you know, I'm a sucker for a collection, so I say at least, you know, give it a chance. Just watch it. And it does come with a really nice little booklet over here, which is filled with information about the House movies, and there's a lot of articles in here, and it's a pretty good little book here. Arrow does a great job. I'm a big fan of Arrow's releases. Their Hellraiser set, very impressive. I'll be doing a review of that one, so check that one out when I do post that video. I really love that little, it's called the Hellraiser Scarlet Box. Awesome set. They've done some other ones. They're really big with Dario Argento right now. I know that Profondo Rosso came out. I know it's the Italian title. I can't remember the American title. Deep Red. Deep Red. They had a set with Deep Red, which was great. There's a set with Videodrome, the David Cronenberg film, which is awesome. And they have a Phantasm set coming out, which I'm super excited about. Awesomely enough, with the Phantasm set, which I will do a review of because I pre-ordered the Arrow set for that one. But there's also a U.S. version coming out from Well USA of the Phantasm movies. So I'm going to do a comparison. I ordered both of them, and I'm going to break those down to show the difference between the two. So overall, I would definitely recommend these to pick up. I think they're fun movies. Especially the first one. I mean, the first one, really, really entertaining. It's really a good little horror comedy. In fact, I will go so far as to say, and don't really quote me on this, but I really think that Sam Raimi saw this movie and said, this is what we need to do with Evil Dead 2. And if anyone's familiar with House and you compare the two, there are some similarities. And when I say similarities, I'm talking about, you know, there's a guy in a house or cabin, and he's being haunted by things. And there's a lot of horror and comedy elements in both. Now, one could say the first Evil Dead was like that, but look, I think the first Evil Dead was more or less a straight horror film. I know there's comedy elements, especially looking back, but, you know, and I could look at it now and say, yeah, there's definitely some funny moments in the first Evil Dead, but I think that movie's definitely more with the horror element than the comedy. And I feel like this, or actually, you know what, guys? Do a double feature. Watch Evil Dead 2, and then follow it up with House. I think that's a good little pairing there. As for the other movies, they're okay. This one's, House 4 is not that great. Let's just move that one off to the side. House 3, definitely worth a watch. And House 2, it really reminds me a little bit of Erie, Indiana. It feels like it should have been an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. It's very kiddified, but still enjoyable. There's fans of the second one, but and man, these special features are awesome. As an ending note here, guys, for the special features, there's new special features for all 4 movies. They're newly produced. There's interviews with Sean S. Cunningham. I know Steve Miner for the first. Harry Manfredini, who did the score for the Friday the 13th movies. I believe did the scores for all 4 of these. And Kane Hodder, who's most famous for playing Jason in Part 7, 8, 9, 10, and sadly not Freddy vs. Jason. He is the stunt choreographer, I believe, in House 1, and I know he's affiliated with the other movies as well. But anyway, there's really good information on here, too. I'm a sucker for good making-of docs, and I think these are produced. Of course, Arrow never lets me down with their documentaries. Really, really, these sets are loaded with special features, and, you know, if you guys want to pause in, you can kind of see. I mean, it's just filled with stuff. And I do love the presentation, even though, like I said, some of these movies are not that great, but the House series, it's just fun. It's a fun time. If you're going to watch any of them, I definitely recommend House 1. Now, one last thing, guys, before I go. Very important. There's 2 sets of this coming out. There's the House, the Collection, which includes all 4 movies. Then there's House 1 and 2. It's just the first 2 movies. Now, this set's going to be released in the UK. The other set's going to be released in the US, both from Arrow Films. Now, or I'm sorry, Arrow Video. However, don't think because these are just released in the UK that you're not going to be able to play these on a US player, because you can actually play the first 2 are regions A and B. So you can play them on both region A and region B. So you can play these on standard Blu-ray players. The last 2 movies are region B only. So in order to play these 2, if you buy the full set, you have to have a region-free player. So that's just a little side note, guys. Once again, this is House, the Collection Blu-ray unboxing and review. I am signing off.